The Call I Never Made. Alright folks, get ready to dive into a story that'll make your heart race and have you side-eyeing your phone the next time it buzzes in the dead of night. This is one of those chilling tales that starts with something as mundane as a phone call, but spirals into a mystery that claws at the edges of reality. It's the kind of thing that makes you wonder if the world we live in is as straightforward as it seems, or if there's something else out there, something that knows your number and isn't afraid to use it. This comes straight from someone who lived it, a moment that turned a quiet night into a nightmare they can't shake. In the strange, dark, and mysterious world we inhabit, some calls don't have a caller, and some messages aren't meant to be answered. Let's get into it. It was just a couple of months ago, sometime around August 25, in a quiet apartment in a city that never quite sleeps. Our storyteller, let's call them Alex, was your average person, living alone in a cozy one-bedroom place. Nothing fancy, just a space with a bed, a nightstand, a TV that was always on a little too loud, and a phone that was never far from reach. Alex was no stranger to late nights, maybe scrolling through X or binge-watching a show. But this night was different. It was around 2:30 a.m., that witching hour, when the world feels like it's holding its breath, and Alex was fast asleep, lost in the kind of deep, dreamless slumber that only comes after a long day. Then, out of nowhere, a sound pierced the silence. The phone on the nightstand was vibrating, its screen glowing like a beacon in the pitch-black room. Alex stirred, groggy, their minds still half-tangled in sleep. They reached for the phone, squinting against the harsh light of the screen, expecting a late-night text from a friend or maybe a spam call. Annoying, but normal. But when their eyes focused on the caller ID, their blood ran cold. The screen wasn't showing a contact name, or even an unknown number. It was showing their own number. Alex's number, the one tied to the phone in their hand, was calling itself. For a moment, Alex just stared, their thumb hovering over the answer button, heart pounding like a drum in their chest. The room felt smaller, the shadows deeper, the air thick with a sudden, inexplicable dread. Who calls their own phone at 2:30 a.m.? Was it a glitch? A prank? Their mind raced for answers, but none made sense. The phone kept buzzing, insistent, like it was demanding to be answered. Alex's gut screamed at them to ignore it, to let it ring out. And that's exactly what they did. They sat there, frozen, watching the screen until the buzzing stopped and the call dropped, leaving the room in suffocating silence. The glow of the screen faded, but Alex's pulse didn't slow. They fumbled to unlock the phone, hands trembling, and opened the call history. There it was, plain as day, a missed call at 2:30 a.m. from their own number. But that wasn't the worst of it. Below that entry, in the outgoing calls, was something even stranger, a call placed from their phone to their own number at the exact same time. It was impossible. Alex hadn't touched the phone, hadn't dialed anything. They'd been asleep. Yet, there it was, logged in black and white, like some kind of digital ghost had taken over their device. The apartment felt different now, like the walls were watching. The usual hum of the fridge, the faint city noise outside, even the creak of the bed as Alex shifted. It all sounded wrong, too loud, too close. They flicked on the bedside lamp, the warm light doing little to chase away the chill creeping up their spine. They checked the phone again, scrolling through every app, every setting, looking for an explanation. Maybe a virus? A hacked account? But everything seemed normal. No strange apps, no unfamiliar contacts, no signs of tampering. Just that call, sitting in the history like a taunting riddle. Alex didn't sleep that night. They left every light in the apartment on, the glow casting harsh shadows that seemed to shift when they weren't looking. They sat on the couch, phone clutched tightly, half expecting it to ring again. It didn't, but the silence was almost worse, like the calm before a storm you know is coming. Morning came, gray and heavy, and Alex tried to shake it off. They told themselves it was a glitch, some weird tech hiccup. They even called their phone provider later that day, but the rep just spouted jargon about network errors and suggested restarting the device. Useless. But here's where it gets really unsettling. Ever since that night, Alex's life hasn't been the same. Every few nights, always in the early hours when the world is at its quietest, they hear it again. Psst, psst, psst. The phone vibrating on the nightstand, a low, insistent hum that pulls them from sleep. They'll grab it, heart racing, expecting another call from their own number, or worse. But when they check, there's nothing. No missed calls, no texts, no notifications. Just a blank screen, mocking them with its silence. Sometimes they'll swear they hear a faint static crackle, like a distant voice trying to break through, but it's gone the moment they focus on it. Alex has tried everything, turning off notifications, putting the phone on silent, even leaving it in another room, but the buzzing persists, always at odd hours, always when they're alone. They've stopped telling friends about it. The few they confided in laughed it off or suggested therapy, which only made Alex feel more isolated. They've checked the phone's logs obsessively, but there's never any record of those phantom vibrations. It's like the phone is haunted, or maybe it's Alex carrying the weight of that one impossible call. So what the hell happened that night? Was it just a glitch, some rare quirk of technology that made Alex's phone call itself? There are stories out there, rare but documented, where phones have done weird things due to network errors or software bugs. But the timing, the dead of night eeriness, and those ongoing phantom vibrations make that explanation feel flimsy. Could it have been something more supernatural? There's folklore in some cultures about spirits using modern tech to reach the living, slipping through the cracks of our connected world. Maybe something latched onto Alex's number, using their own phone as a doorway. Or what if, and this is the thought that keeps Alex up at night, it wasn't a spirit at all, but a version of themselves? A shadow self, a glitch in reality, trying to make contact from some other place? Alex doesn't know, and they're not sure they want to. They've thought about changing their number, getting a new phone, even moving to a new apartment, but something stops them. Fear maybe, or a nagging curiosity. What if answering that call would have explained everything? What if whatever's on the other end is still waiting, still buzzing in the dark? Alright folks, strap in, because we're about to take a deep dive into a story that'll make you question what's real and what's just a flicker in the corner of your eye. This is one of those tales that creeps under your skin, lingering like a cold draft in an old house. It's not just about a spooky moment, it's about something that shouldn't exist, something that defies logic, and leaves you wondering about the thin veil between the past and the present. This comes straight from someone who experienced it, a memory so vivid it's haunted them for years. In the strange, dark, and mysterious world we live in, some things don't just go away, even when they're supposed to be gone forever. Let's get into it. The year was 2011, and our storyteller, let's call her Lily, was just a kid, about 10 years old, living her life without a care in the world. Her family wasn't exactly the picture of harmony, especially when it came to her mom, Anna, and her grandmother. Anna had a rocky history with her mother, the kind of bad blood that kept visits to Grandma's house few and far between. But on this particular July day, Anna decided it was time to show her daughters, Lily and her older sister Sophie, where she grew up. Grandma wasn't home, which suited Anna just fine. She'd borrowed the keys, maybe without asking, and took the girls to the old house for a quick visit. No big deal, right? Just a trip down memory lane. The house itself was nothing special at first glance. A modest two-story place, probably built decades ago, with creaky floors and that musty smell old homes tend to have. It sat in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where kids ride bikes until dusk, and neighbors keep to themselves. But there was something about this house, something heavy in the air, like it was holding on to secrets nobody wanted to dig up. Lily didn't know it at the time, but this house had a history, one her mom had spent years trying to forget. See, long before Lily was born, back when Anna was young, maybe in her late teens or early 20s, she'd had an experience in that house that changed her forever. It was the kind of thing you don't talk about at family dinners, the kind of thing you bury deep and hope stays buried. Anna and her sister, maybe a few friends, had decided to mess around with a spiritism session. You know, the kind of thing curious kids do when they're feeling brave and stupid. They lit candles, sat in a circle, maybe even used a Ouija board, whispering questions into the dark, half laughing, half scared. But then, something happened. A porcelain doll, one of Grandma's prized possessions, did something it shouldn't have. It was sitting in the room with them, propped up on a shelf or a chair, its glassy eyes catching the candlelight. And then, without warning, it moved. Not a fall, not a slip. It turned its head, slow and deliberate, and blinked while staring straight at Anna. The room erupted in chaos. Anna screamed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it had burst. She didn't wait for explanations. She bolted out of the house. The image of that doll's lifeless eyes locking onto hers burned into her mind. After that night, Anna avoided her mother's house like the plague. The bad blood between them didn't help, but that doll? That was the final straw. She swore she'd never go back unless she had to, and even then, she'd never feel safe there. Fast forward to 2011. Lily, Sophie, and Anna are walking through that same house, now a little worse for wear. The place felt frozen in time. Faded wallpaper, old furniture, the faint smell of smoke lingering from a kitchen fire that had torn through years ago. That fire had been a freak accident, sparked by faulty wiring or a forgotten stove, and it had gutted part of the house. Most of Grandma's belongings survived, but some things didn't, including supposedly that porcelain doll. It was reduced to ash, nothing left but a memory and a few scorched remnants of the life it had been part of. Lily was wandering the ground floor, poking around like any curious kid would, while Anna and Sophie chatted nearby. The staircase loomed ahead, a narrow wooden thing that creaked with every step, leading up to the darker, quieter second floor. At the base of those stairs sat a small wrought iron chair, ornate but rusted, the kind of thing you would expect in an antique shop. Lily's eyes drifted to it, and that's when she saw her. A porcelain doll, sitting primly on the chair, as if she'd been placed there just moments ago. She had wavy blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, a green dress with delicate lace trim, and a small bowl of dried lavender nestled between her legs. Her glassy eyes stared straight ahead, unblinking, catching the faint daylight filtering through a nearby window. To Lily, it was just a doll, pretty, maybe a little creepy, but nothing out of the ordinary. She didn't think much of it, just noted it in her head like you'd notice a lamp or a rug. "Hey, Mom," Lily said casually, turning to Anna. "That doll on the chair is kinda cool. Where'd it come from?" The words hung in the air for a split second before everything changed. Anna's face went white, like the blood had drained from her body. Her eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. "What doll?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Lily frowned, confused. "The one right there," she said, pointing to the chair at the base of the stairs. Blonde hair, green dress with the lavender bowl. Sophie glanced over, curious but not alarmed, her eyes scanning the empty chair. Empty. There was nothing there. Anna's questions came fast, sharp, like she was interrogating a suspect. What did it look like? Where exactly was it? Describe it. Lily, picking up on her mom's panic, started to falter but gave every detail: the wavy hair, the green dress, the lavender, the way the doll sat perfectly centered on that wrought iron chair. With every word, Anna's face grew more ashen, her hands trembling. Sophie, sensing the tension, stayed quiet, her eyes darting between her mom and the empty chair. Anna grabbed her phone, her fingers shaking so badly she could barely dial. She called her mother, Lily's grandmother, and demanded answers. "Do you still have that doll? The porcelain one from back then? Is this some kind of sick joke?" Her voice was a mix of fear and anger, rising with every word. Grandma's response was calm, matter-of-fact, and it hit like a sledgehammer. "There is no doll. There hadn't been for years. That porcelain doll, the one that had turned its head and blinked during that spiritism session, had been destroyed in the fire. The flames had consumed it, leaving nothing behind but the wrought iron chair, which had survived unscathed, its black metal untouched by the heat. Grandma hadn't replaced it, hadn't kept any other dolls. The house was doll-free, and had been for decades." Lily stood there, her heart pounding, trying to process what she'd just heard. She saw that doll, clear as day, sitting there like it belonged. She could still picture the texture of its dress, the way the lavender smelled faintly, even from a few feet away, but Sophie hadn't seen it, Anna hadn't seen it, and now Grandma was saying it couldn't exist. The chair sat there, empty, mocking them with its silence. Anna grabbed the girls, her voice tight. "We're leaving, now!" They didn't argue. They piled into the car, the house's heavy air clinging to them like damp cloth, and drove away without looking back. Weeks later, they returned to the house, maybe to pick something up, maybe because Anna felt she had to face it. Lily's stomach churned as they approached the staircase, her eyes locked on that wrought iron chair. She half expected to see the doll again, those glassy eyes staring through her. But there was nothing, just the chair, rusted and empty, sitting at the base of the stairs like a sentinel. She avoided looking at it for too long, a chill creeping up her spine. Sophie, usually the braver one, stayed close, her usual confidence shaken. Anna didn't say much, but her silence spoke volumes. Whatever had happened that day, it had rattled her to her core, dragging up memories she'd spent years trying to bury. Lily's never forgotten that doll. The image is seared into her mind. The blonde hair, the green dress, the lavender bowl, the way it sat so perfectly, so real. She's tried to explain it away, a trick of the light, a kid's overactive imagination, maybe even a memory her mom's story planted in her head. But none of those feel right. She saw it, clear as she sees anything, and it matched her mom's description from that spiritism session down to the last detail. Was it a hallucination, sparked by the house's eerie vibe? A residual echo of something long gone, tied to the chair that survived the fire? Or was it something more, something that lingered in that house, tied to the spiritism session that had opened a door all those years ago? Lily doesn't have answers, and neither does Anna. But one thing's for sure, dolls aren't just dolls to them anymore. They're reminders of a moment when the past reached out and touched the present, leaving a mark that won't fade. Lily avoids porcelain dolls now, their glassy eyes too much like the one she saw that day. And that wrought iron chair? She can't look at it without feeling like something's watching, waiting for her to notice it again. So what do you think? Was Lily's vision a glimpse of her uncle's spirit, tied to the house in that fateful spiritism session, manifesting as the doll that had once terrified her mother? Or was it something darker, something that used the doll's image to make itself known? Maybe the house itself held on to the memory of that fire, replaying it like a broken record for anyone sensitive enough to see. Or maybe, just maybe, that spiritism session all those years ago left a crack in the world, and something slipped through. A shadow of a doll that no longer exists, sitting patiently on a chair that refused to burn. It was 2017, somewhere in a bustling college town. Think late-night pizza runs, dorm parties, and students cramming for exams under fluorescent lights. Our guy, let's call him Jake, was a junior at the university, living the typical broke student life, but doing all right for himself. He'd scored a decent one-bedroom apartment just off campus. Not one of those rundown student slums, but a proper place with clean walls, a working stove, and a bathroom that didn't look like it belonged in a horror movie. It was on the third floor of a modern complex, nothing fancy, but safe, quiet, the kind of place where you'd expect to feel secure. Jake was a practical dude, studied engineering, kept his place tidy, locked his doors religiously because, city life. He lived alone, no roommates, no pets, no girlfriend. His family was hours away in some rural nowhere town, so it was just him and his textbooks most nights. It was a late night, probably around midnight. Jake was exhausted after a long week of midterm exams and just wanted to relax. He decided to take a hot bath to wash away the stress. His apartment had this old bathroom intercom, one of those vintage wall systems people used decades ago to call for help or talk to someone in another room. Jake never used it. It was just a dusty button near the light switch that he hardly noticed. He filled the bathtub, and soon the room filled with thick steam, fogging up the mirror. The small bathroom felt warm and cozy, with white tiles, a single yellow bulb glowing softly, and the low hum of the water heater in the background. Jake got in, let the hot water surround him, and closed his eyes. For the first time all week, he felt calm. Just another quiet night, or so he thought. Wrong. As Jake was soaking, his hand brushed against the wall, maybe reaching for the soap, or just shifting to get comfortable. His fingers grazed that intercom button, and click, he pressed it by accident. No big deal, he thought. It's not like anyone's gonna answer. The thing probably didn't even work. He leaned back, closing his eyes, letting the warmth seep into his bones. The apartment was quiet, save for the occasional drip from the faucet and the faint hum of the traffic outside. For a moment, everything was peaceful. Then, clear as day, a voice cut through the silence. "Wait there, I'm coming now." It was a woman's voice, soft, almost melodic, but with an edge that made Jake's stomach lurch. It came from just outside the bathroom door, so close it was like she was standing there, her lips pressed to the wood. The words were deliberate, unhurried, like she knew exactly where he was. Jake's eyes snapped open, water sloshing as he sat bolt upright in the tub. His heart started pounding, a cold sweat breaking out despite the steaming water. His apartment was empty. He lived alone. There was no woman, no one who could have spoken. His family was hundreds of miles away, and he hadn't had a date in months. Hell, he didn't even know any women in the building well enough to recognize their voices. He froze, straining to listen. The silence was deafening now, the kind of quiet that feels like it's pressing down on you, suffocating. No footsteps, no creaks, just the drip, drip, drip of the faucet and his own ragged breathing. He tried to rationalize it, maybe a neighbor's voice carried through the walls, but no, it was too clear, too close, like she was right there, waiting. His mind raced. Had someone broken in? Impossible. He'd locked the front door when he got home from class, slid the chain into place like always. He was meticulous about that, especially living alone. But that voice, it wasn't just in his head. It was real. The water felt colder now, the steam clinging to his skin like damp fingers. Jake's whole body started to shake, not just from the chill, but from a primal dread that was sinking its claws into him. He didn't want to move, didn't want to make a sound, but he couldn't stay in that tub. Not with her out there, whoever she was. He forced himself to stand, water dripping onto the tiles with a soft patter that sounded too loud in the stillness. His eyes locked on the bathroom door, a flimsy piece of wood that suddenly felt like his only barrier against whatever was waiting outside. He grabbed a towel, wrapping it around himself, his hands fumbling as he pulled on his clothes, a t-shirt and sweatpants still damp from the bath. Every second felt like an eternity, his pulse hammering in his ears. He reached for the door handle, then hesitated. What if she was standing there? What if he opened it and saw something? His mind conjured images he didn't want to face. A figure in the shadows, eyes glinting, or worse, nothing at all, just that voice echoing again. He shook his head, muttering to himself, "Get it together, Jake. There's no one here." But he didn't believe it, not really. Steeling himself, he yanked the door open and bolted. He didn't look around, didn't check the corners of his apartment or peeked into the dark living room. He just ran, straight for the front door, his bare feet slapping against the hardwood. The apartment was pitch black beyond the bathroom's glow, the moonlight from the windows casting jagged shadows that seemed to twist and shift as he passed. He reached the front door, his hands shaking so badly he could barely grip the knob. And that's when he noticed it. The chain lock was still in place. The deadbolt was turned just as he'd left it when he got home. No one could have gotten in. No one. Jake fumbled with the chain, his fingers clumsy, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The whole time, he felt it. A presence, like eyes boring into his back from the darkness of the apartment. He didn't dare turn around. Finally, the chain slid free, the door swung open, and he stumbled into the hallway, slamming it shut behind him. He didn't stop running until he was pounding on his friend's door. Let's call him Mike, half a mile away in another apartment complex. Mike opened the door then to find Jake standing there, pale as death, dripping wet, his clothes clinging to him like he'd just crawled out of a river. Jake collapsed onto the floor, trembling so hard his teeth chattered. "What the hell happened?" Mike asked, kneeling beside him. It took a while for Jake to get the words out, his voice shaking as he recounted the story. The intercom, the woman's voice. "Wait there, I'm coming now." The locked door, the chain still in place. Mike pressed him. "Did you see her? Was anyone actually there?" Jake's eyes darted to the floor, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, man. I was too scared to look. I just ran." That night, Jake crashed at Mike's place. He refused to turn off the lights, sitting on the couch with a bottle of whiskey from Mike's fridge, taking long pulls to steady his nerves. He didn't sleep, just stared at the wall, jumping at every creak of the building. The next morning, he called his parents and told them he wasn't going back to that apartment. Not ever. A week later, his family showed up to pack his stuff and move him out. Jake didn't go with them. Whatever he left behind, clothes, books, furniture, he didn't care. He just wanted to be as far away from that place as possible. Mike never heard from Jake again after that. No calls, no texts, no updates. It was like he vanished into the countryside with his family, cutting ties with his old life. The apartment was re-rented soon after, and as far as Mike knows, no one else ever reported anything strange. But he can't shake the memory of Jake's face that night, the raw, animal terror in his eyes. And ever since, Mike's been careful. He doesn't have an intercom in his bathroom, but when he's in the shower, he makes damn sure his phone's nowhere near anything that could accidentally dial out. Because deep down, he wonders, what if Jake pressed that button and opened a door to something that wasn't supposed to be there? Something that was waiting just on the other side of the wall, ready to answer. Now, here's the thing about this story that keeps me up at night. Jake's apartment was locked tight, chain, deadbolt, the works. No one could have gotten in. So, whose voice did he hear? Was it a prank? A glitch in the intercom picking up a random signal? Or was it something else? Something tied to that building, to the land it was built on, to the stories no one talks about? And why did Jake disappear after that? Like he was running from more than just a memory. If you've got a story like this, something strange, something dark, something that makes you question what's real, drop it in the comments. And next time you're in the bathroom, maybe double check that intercom. Or better yet, don't touch it at all. Sweet dreams, folks. It was a quiet evening, sometime in the not-so-distant past, in a small family home tucked away in a sleepy neighborhood. The kind of place where the biggest drama is usually who ate the last slice of pizza or whose turn it is to take out the trash. Our storyteller, let's call her Mia, was a teenager at the time, maybe 15 or 16, sprawled out on her bed, scrolling through her phone like any kid her age. Her older sister, let's say Sophie, a couple of years older, was in the same room getting dressed after a shower. The sisters shared a bedroom, a cozy little space with 2 beds pushed against the walls, a nightstand cluttered with snacks and chargers, and a single door leading out to the rest of the house. It was one of those nights where nothing much was happening, just the hum of the house settling, maybe the faint murmur of the TV in the living room, where their mom was probably watching her favorite drama. Now, this room had a lock on the door, and for good reason. Sophie was particular about her privacy when she was changing, so she'd flipped the lock to keep anyone from barging in. Mia didn't mind. She was lost in her phone, probably laughing at memes or texting friends, waiting for Sophie to finish so they could head out to the living room and maybe raid the fridge. The air was calm, the kind of stillness that wraps around you like a blanket. Outside, the neighborhood was dark, the streetlights casting a soft glow through the curtains, painting faint stripes across the walls. It was just another night, or so they thought. Sophie was just pulling on her shirt, zipping up her jeans, when Mia decided to shift positions on her bed. Maybe her arm was falling asleep, or maybe she was just restless, who knows. She rolled over, facing the other bed in the room, the one Sophie wasn't using. At that exact moment, Sophie turned too, maybe to grab something from the nightstand or just to stretch. And that's when it happened. Both sisters froze, their eyes locking on to the same impossible sight. There, on the empty bed, was a silhouette, a shadow of a person, sitting as clear as day. Not a vague blur, not a trick of the light, but the distinct outline of someone there, perched on the edge of the mattress. It wasn't moving, wasn't making a sound, just sitting. The figure was human-shaped, but featureless, like a void cut out of the room's dim light, its edges sharp against the moonlight filtering through the window. Mia's heart leapt into her throat, her phone forgotten in her hand. Sophie's breath hitched, her hand still clutching the hem of her shirt. They didn't scream, didn't speak, just stared, their minds racing to make sense of what they were seeing. And then, as if the universe decided that wasn't enough to rattle them, the door did something impossible. The handle, or maybe the lock plate, depending on how you picture it, turned. Not a jiggle, not a creak, but a deliberate mechanical twist, followed by the unmistakable click of the lock releasing. The door didn't swing open, didn't budge, but that sound echoed in the room like a gunshot. The sisters whipped amidst their heads toward each other, eyes wide, faces pale, as if to confirm they weren't imagining this. The shadow on the bed didn't move, didn't react, but its presence seemed to press down on them, heavy, like the air itself was thickening. Mia didn't think, she just moved. In one fluid, adrenaline-fueled leap, she was off the bed, her phone clattering to the floor as she bolted for the door. She yanked it open, the now unlocked handle giving way easily, and sprinted down the hall toward the living room, where the glow of the TV and their mom's presence promised safety. Sophie was right behind her, her footsteps pounding in sync, a frantic duet of panic. They burst into the living room, breathless, tripping over their words as they tried to explain to their mom what had just happened. "There was something on the bed," Mia stammered. "The door unlocked itself," Sophie added, her voice shaking. Their mom, startled out of her show, looked at them like they'd lost their minds, but the raw terror on their faces must have convinced her something was up. She didn't dismiss them outright, just told them to calm down and stay in the living room. That night, neither sister would set foot back in their bedroom. They camped out on the couch, blankets pulled tight, the TV left on for comfort, its flickering light pushing back the shadows. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside, made them jump. They kept replaying it in their heads, the shadow, the lock, the way it all happened in perfect, chilling unison. By morning, they were exhausted, but the daylight brought a fragile sense of normalcy. They almost convinced themselves it was a shared hallucination, a trick of tired eyes and overactive imaginations. Then came the news that shattered that fragile comfort. That afternoon, their mom got a call. Her brother, Mia, and Sophie's uncle had passed away. It wasn't sudden, he'd been sick for a while, but the timing hit like a freight train. Just hours after that shadow, that unlocked door, he was gone. Mia couldn't shake the thought that crept into her mind. Was that him? Was that shadow their uncle, sitting on the bed, saying a silent goodbye before he left this world? Sophie wondered the same, though neither voiced it right away, as if saying it out loud would make it too real. They talked about it later, piecing together the memory, trying to decide if it was a farewell or something else. Something darker, maybe, that just happened to coincide with their uncle's death. The house went quiet after that. No more shadows, no more self-unlocking doors. Life moved on, but Mia and Sophie never quite looked at their bedroom the same way. They'd catch themselves glancing at that empty bed sometimes, half expecting to see that silhouette again. And the lock? They triple-checked it every night, just to be sure. So, what was it? Was that shadow really their uncle, stopping by one last time to say goodbye, his spirit lingering in the place where his family lived? There's something beautiful in that idea. A loved one reaching out across the veil, choosing a quiet moment to be near the ones they're leaving behind. But there's another possibility, one that's harder to swallow. What if it wasn't him at all? What if something else was in that room, something that knew the sisters were vulnerable, something that twisted the lock and sat in the dark, waiting to be noticed? The timing of their uncle's death could have been a coincidence, a cruel trick of fate that made them see meaning where there was only malice. After all, shadows don't just sit on beds, and locked doors don't just open themselves, do they? Mia leans toward the idea it was her uncle, a final moment of connection, but deep down, she wonders. The way that shadow felt, the way the air turned heavy, it didn't feel like love or farewell. It felt like something watching, something waiting. And that's the kind of thought that keeps you up at night, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of a door handle turning. So, what was it? Was that shadow really their uncle, stopping by one last time to say goodbye, his spirit lingering in the place where his family lived? There's something beautiful in that idea. A loved one reaching out across the veil, choosing a quiet moment to be near the ones they're leaving behind. But there's another possibility, one that's harder to swallow. What if it wasn't him at all? What if something else was in that room, something that knew the sisters were vulnerable, something that twisted the lock and sat in the dark, waiting to be noticed? The timing of their uncle's death could have been a coincidence, a cruel trick of fate that made them see meaning where there was only malice. After all, shadows don't just sit on beds, and locked doors don't just open themselves, do they? Mia leans toward the idea it was her uncle, a final moment of connection, but deep down, she wonders. The way that shadow felt, the way the air turned heavy, it didn't feel like love or farewell. It felt like something watching, something waiting. And that's the kind of thought that keeps you up at night, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of a door handle turning. In the strange, dark, and mysterious world we live in, sometimes the things that go bump in the night aren't just figments of our imagination. They're echoes of something far older, far more sinister, lurking just out of sight. And tonight, I'm going to tell you a story that's going to make you think twice about leaving your bedroom door open after dark. This one comes from a real experience shared by someone who swears it happened to them and their sister back when they were just kids. Names have been kept as they were told to me, but trust me, by the time we're done here, you'll be checking under your own bed, just in case. Picture this. It's the mid-1990s, somewhere in a quiet suburban neighborhood that used to be nothing but endless stretches of farmland, rolling fields where crops grew tall under the sun, and where, if the old-timers are to be believed, more than a few folks met untimely ends. Accidents with machinery, disappearances in the dead of night, whispers of feuds that turned bloody. But time marches on, and developers swooped in, bulldozing the earth to make way for shiny new apartment complexes. One of those was a modest flat rented by a young family: mom, dad, 2 sisters, and their little brother Nathan. The place was modern enough, fresh paint, new appliances, but it had this one feature that always felt a little off. A long, steep staircase that plunged down from the upper floor like a throat leading into the belly of the house. At the bottom, just a few feet away, was the door to the backyard, which overlooked what was left of those old farmlands, now just overgrown weeds and shadows that seemed to stretch a little too far under the moonlight. The 2 sisters, let's call the younger one Emily, who was about 6 or 7 at the time, and her older sister Sarah, maybe 8 or 9, shared a bedroom right at the top of those stairs, off to the right. From their beds, they had a perfect side view of the staircase, like an eerie balcony overlooking a drop into darkness. It wasn't unusual for them to leave the door open at night. The house was small, and the airflow helped on those warm summer evenings. But on this particular night, something was different. The air felt thicker, heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. Outside, the wind whispered through the remnants of the farmland, rustling leaves that sounded almost like distant footsteps. Emily and Sarah had gone to bed as usual, giggling about school or whatever kids talk about. But as the hours ticked by and the house settled into that deep, midnight silence, sleep finally claimed them. It started with a sound, soft at first, barely noticeable over the creaks of the settling building. A whimper, then another. Emily stirred in her bed, her eyes fluttering open to the dim glow filtering in from the window. Moonlight painted the room in silvery blues, casting long shadows that danced like fingers across the walls. She lay there for a moment, trying to place the noise. It was coming from the staircase, just outside their open door, a quiet, heartbreaking sob, like a child in distress. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She knew that cry. It was Nathan, their little brother, who was maybe 4 or 5 years old back then. Sweet kid, but he had a habit of wandering at night when he had bad dreams. Sarah woke up too, rubbing her eyes and whispering hoarsely, "Emily, you hear that?" Emily nodded, her small voice trembling just a bit. "It's Nathan. He's crying on the stairs." They both peered out from their beds, and there he was, curled up on the bottom step, his little body hunched over, shoulders shaking with each muffled sob. The moonlight hit him just right, illuminating his pajamas, the ones with the cartoon characters on them, and making his blonde hair glow like a halo. But something about it felt wrong. The house was dead quiet otherwise. No lights on downstairs, no sounds from their parents' room. Why was he down there alone? And why wasn't he coming up or calling for mom? The sisters exchanged glances, annoyance bubbling up over the fear. They were tired, after all, school the next day, and Nathan's cries were like nails on a chalkboard in the stillness. "Nathan!" Emily called out, her voice echoing slightly down the stairs. "Why are you crying? Go back to bed." But he didn't respond, just kept sobbing, that soft rhythmic whimper that tugged at your heartstrings even as it grated on your nerves. Sarah chimed in, "Nathan, it's late. Stop it and go to sleep." Still nothing. He didn't even look up, just stayed curled there, face buried in his knees. Now, here's where the bickering started, the kind only siblings can have in the dead of night. Emily whispered fiercely, "You go check on him. You're older." Sarah shot back, "No way, you're closer to the door. Besides, he's probably just being a baby again." They went back and forth like that for what felt like forever, their voices hushed but urgent, all while watching Nathan's small form tremble on that bottom step. The staircase seemed longer in the dark, each wooden tread creaking faintly under an invisible weight, shadows pooling at the edges like ink spilling from a bottle. Emily remembers staring at him, memorizing every detail, the way his tiny hands clutched his legs, the subtle rise and fall of his back with each cry. It was almost hypnotic, that glow from the moon wrapping around him like a shroud. Finally, after minutes of arguing that stretched into an eternity, they decided to go together. Safety in numbers, right? They slipped out of their beds, bare feet padding softly on the cool floor. The house felt colder now, a chill that seeped up from the stairs like fog rolling in from the old farmlands outside. Step by step, they descended, hearts pounding louder with each creak of the wood. The backyard door loomed at the bottom, its glass pane reflecting the moonlight like a watchful eye. Nathan was right there, just a few feet away, his cries growing a tad louder as they approached, almost as if he sensed them coming, but still, he didn't move. Emily reached out first, her hand trembling as she placed it gently on what she thought was his shoulder. "Nathan, hey, it's okay," but the words died in her throat. The moment her fingers made contact, it was like touching smoke. His figure just vanished. Poof, gone in an instant, like a puff of breath on a cold window. The crying stopped abruptly, leaving behind a silence so profound it pressed against their eardrums. Emily's hand hung in the air, waving through empty space where her brother had been seconds ago. Nothing. No warmth, no fabric, no little boy. Just the cold, empty step. Panic exploded in their chests. Sarah gasped. What just happened?" Emily's mind raced. Had they imagined it? But no, they'd both seen him, heard him. They spun around, eyes wide, scanning the shadows at the base of the stairs. The backyard door stared back, unmoving, but the moonlight outside seemed to shift, as if something out there in the fields was watching. Freaked out beyond words, the girls bolted back up the stairs, their feet thundering on the wood, breaths coming in sharp gasps. They dove into their beds, pulling the blankets over their heads like shields against the night. In their terror, they forgot one crucial thing: the door. It stood wide open, a gaping maw inviting whatever was out there to come in. Under the covers, Emily's heart hammered like a drum. She tried to convince herself it was a trick of the light, a shared nightmare, anything rational. But then, she peeked, just a quick glance over the edge of the blanket, toward the open door and the staircase beyond. And that's when she saw it. From the top of the stairs, something fuzzy and black, about the size of a soccer ball, but irregular, like a tangled mass of shadows, began to roll. Slowly at first, tumbling end over end down the steps with a soft, almost inaudible thump, thump, thump. It wasn't rolling like a ball would. It moved with purpose, deliberate, as if it was alive. The moonlight caught its edges, making it look oily, slick, like wet fur matted with something dark. It reached the bottom, paused for a heartbeat, long enough for Emily's blood to turn to ice, and then it veered toward their room. Rolling faster now, straight under her bed. Emily yanked the blanket back over her head, squeezing her eyes shut, whispering prayers she didn't even know she remembered. The room fell silent again, but she could feel it, that presence lurking beneath her, waiting. Sarah must have sensed it too. Neither said a word, just lay there frozen until exhaustion finally dragged them into a fitful sleep. The next morning, sunlight flooded the room like nothing had happened. Birds chirped outside. The house smelled of breakfast cooking downstairs. Emily and Sarah woke up groggy, exchanging wide-eyed looks. "Did you dream that?" Emily asked. Sarah shook her head slowly. "No, it was real. Nathan on the stairs, disappearing, and that thing." They retold the story to each other, piecing it together, but the more they talked, the more it felt like a fading nightmare. They checked on Nathan. He was fine, sleeping soundly in his room, no memory of wandering or crying. Their parents brushed it off as kids' imaginations when they mentioned it later, and strangely, nothing like that ever happened again in that house. The family moved on. Life went back to normal. But Emily, she doesn't believe in ghosts. Not really. People don't just disappear like that, right? And yet, years later, she still wonders about those old farmlands under the foundation. What secrets they buried, what echoes they might have left behind. Was it a trick of the mind? A hallucination shared by two scared kids? Or something else, something that rolled into their lives that night and vanished just as quickly? If you've got a story like this, strange, dark, mysterious, share it in the comments. And remember, next time you hear crying in the night, maybe don't go check. Sweet dreams.